There are many different types of business agreements that you can enter into when it comes to working with other organizations. One such example, when linking organizations or even government agencies together, is an Interconnection Security Agreement, or an ISA. Now, this is one of those types of agreements that can be legally binding in some cases, and so it does warrant legal review. Also, it might be designed so that the interconnection between two networks for different agencies or private sector firms are connected in such a way where they are compliant with regulations that apply to the organizations. So maybe, for example, requiring encryption with a site-to-site VPN tunnel. Now, the other thing to think about is that an ISA can also stipulate more than just the live network connection, but it can also require things like providing the results of vulnerability scans that were conducted on both sides of that network connection. There might also be mandatory training or certification required by the technicians that are establishing that network link and also that are maintaining it over time. And you'll see this done often, actually, when government agencies need to work together and share data, when you have business partners that need to share data, or during a company merger or acquisition. So this also means that we need input from cybersecurity specialists like Security Plus professionals on what to watch out for applying the right security controls. Another type of agreement is a service level agreement, and you'll find this often in cloud computing, although that's not the only place it exists, of course. A service level agreement is a contractual document between a service provider, like a cloud provider, and a consumer of that service, like a cloud customer. The purpose of the service level agreement is to guarantee uptime for a service. And the SLA also includes what the consequences are if the provider cannot meet those stated requirements. Now, to drill this home, why don't we actually go online and take a look at a Microsoft Azure SLA for virtual machines running in the cloud. Okay, so every public cloud provider publishes a service level agreement or an SLA for each of the services that they offer, such as virtual machines versus cloud storage versus hosted web apps. If we were to take a quick peek at the SLA for virtual machines running in the cloud, whether they're Linux or Windows based, we get details about the configuration of the virtual machines. As you might imagine, a cloud provider is going to be interested in knowing if you configured virtual machines to be highly available or not. Because the more highly available you configure them to be, the higher the likelihood that they will remain up and running in case of an outage in one region. As we go further down, what you're going to find a lot in SLAs also is a definition of terms, and then we're going to open up the SLA details here. The reason we want to look at the SLA details is because we have the specified amount of uptime on a monthly basis. Such as if we have, for example, less than 99.99% uptime for a virtual machine, then that means that as a cloud customer, we get a 10% service credit against our next bill. Whereas if there's less than 95% uptime on a per monthly basis, then as a customer, we get a 100% service credit to use against our next bill. So that's the purpose of an SLA, is to guarantee some kind of service reliability. It can also be used even within an organization, between departments, for really any type of service. It doesn't have to be cloud computing. On the business side, we also have different types of agreements, like a memorandum of understanding between two parties. The idea being that we have the broad terms of the agreement that are provided within the MOU. Then there's a memorandum of agreement, or an MOA, which is a little bit more detailed, again, between two parties, that has more detailed terms of the agreement between them, the kind of business arrangement that they're in. A business partnership agreement, or a BPA, is yet another type of agreement. This one is a legal document, so it's binding. It outlines between two parties, and you might imagine that we have two parties that will be working together on a contract. So it's a contractual type of obligation. But the idea with the BPA is it can stipulate what responsibilities are assumed by either or both parties, the investment that either or both parties are putting into the agreement, and also any decision-making powers and where they lie. Then we have a non-disclosure agreement, or an NDA. That comes in a lot of forms, meaning it might be used during user onboarding, if a user that's being hired might end up seeing sensitive company trade secrets. In having conducted security audits in the past, I myself have been asked to sign NDAs in case I come across any sensitive information, trade secrets, whether it's customer information, finances for the organization, The idea is we want to make sure that people that come across that don't disclose it externally. So we're talking about protecting sensitive information. Let's take a look at an example of a non-disclosure agreement online for conducting penetration tests. So I've done a Google search for penetration test NDA, and here it's taken me to the University of Iowa, where we have a sample penetration testing agreement. Now, penetration testing is active exploitation of weaknesses, which means it could bring some systems down potentially. So it's important that all the rules of engagement are stipulated clearly in the NDA. For example, we have a list in this sample of the type of component or type of testing, whether it's network scanning, system profiling, vulnerability identification, and exploitation. The business owner and the data custodian must both sign off on this along with the penetration testing team. So that's yet another form of a non-disclosure agreement. So as we've seen, we have to be aware of these different types of agreements. Some are more technical based, some are more business based, but on the Security Plus exam, you will be tested on your knowledge of which of them applies in a given scenario.